Today I want to talk to you about the different types of informal and unincorporated business entities. And the reason that it's a little bit confusing is that you can do business without an LLC, without a corporation, without a benefit corporation or a professional corporation. All of those are types of business entities. Now there are unofficial, informal, unincorporated business vehicles or business entities. And it can get tricky if you use entities because that usually is going to mean LLC or corporation or one of those. But these are the types of ways you can do business that are less official, meaning you don't have to file with the state and they aren't necessarily governed by the same rules as the LLCs and the corporations would be with regard to like shareholders and ownership. But which this probably all sounds really appealing, right? Like I don't have to do as much filing with the state, which means less expense, which means less oversight, and that is all pretty appealing. However, the main reason to have a business entity like an LLC or a corporation in place is that it protects your personal assets from liability that you get from doing business. Whereas these unofficial, these informal ways of doing business do not protect your personal assets from liability. So I haven't even mentioned what they are. Well, there's only a few of them, and you've probably heard them before, and chances are you've heard people confuse them too and call maybe an LLC or a corporation one of these unofficial actual ways to do business. And so the various types are sole proprietor. That is going to be when you and you alone, just as an individual, are doing business. There's no business entity in place. You haven't filed anything with the state. Maybe you did file to get a DBA locally or a fictitious business name they're called. And you know, maybe you did some other filings because when you're doing business, you still have to get things like your business tax certificate and some other things like that covered in another video, but you don't have to actually file to become a sole proprietor. If you just go out, get a website and start doing business, you're a sole proprietor. Now, if there's more than one person, then that becomes a partnership. A partnership is going to be the informal equivalent of doing business as a sole proprietor, but with more than one person. So a partnership, there's actually a couple different kinds of partnerships that you can have. There's a limited partnership and a general partnership. Almost always when people set out to do business with two or more people and they don't file for an LLC or a corporation, they're automatically going to be a general partnership. And typically you'll need an agreement in place that says sort of what the parameters are of that partnership and what the rights and responsibilities are, but you can have a verbal partnership agreement. So be careful on what you agree on with that partner because that could come back and be binding later. And then that, again, general partnership. Limited partnership, what does that limited part mean? Well, usually with a limited partnership, there's going to be one partner that has limited liability. They are sort of like just the investing partner or the one that contributes the money, but they're not actually out there doing a lot of the work that the business does. And so they have a little bit less liability than that general partner that's doing all the work. So that sounds a little confusing, I'm sure, but a limited partnership has a limited partner and a general partner. And then, of course, if there's three or more people, there could be a few limited and a few general. So let's recap these informal ways of doing business, which are not official business entities, because business entities you file with the state like an LLC or a corporation. So these informal ones, sole proprietor, when that's just you, don't need to file with the state. If you have two people, partnership, and that can be a general partnership if you both have all the rights and have all the liability, or a limited partnership where one person maybe has a little bit less liability. But keep in mind, even with a limited partnership, because it's an informal business entity, the liability sort of reduction mechanisms that you put in place for that limited partner still are not going to be as strong and not going to be as protective as if you had an LLC or a corporation in place, because those are the things that provide that official personal asset liability protection. So if you just jump out and start going and doing business, you're going to be one of these, sole proprietor or partnership. So don't get it twisted. You can still do business that way, totally fine. You can still go get business permits and seller's permits and have bank accounts and all the things, but you have less personal liability protection. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks.